Well, good evening. It's good for us to be together. Thank you for coming and being a part of our worship tonight. I went home this afternoon after our morning worship and immediately developed what is for me one of my classic migraine headaches. I don't get them very often, maybe 3 times a year. This is the second one, so maybe this will be it for most of the year, but I've taken 2 Tylenol and 2 Aleve, so if my tongue gets tangled and my words get mixed up, you'll be able to cut me a little slack tonight. Feeling much better, though. We are continuing, as Mitch said, in Luke chapter 15, as we are talking about Jesus and about this group that he is addressing. And he has done so, as we saw this morning, very masterfully. With great skill, he has been able to prick the heart and to engage the mind. I can just picture this scene as Jesus is moving and as this crowd is surrounding him. If you've ever been to a large city, perhaps it's been the case that you've seen street performers on the streets of certain cities. I've seen them numbers of times, and it's interesting how it is that they draw their crowd in. They always start with something very simple, and they will actually engage the crowd and invite people to come and be a part of them, and they'll do something that will be of entertainment, and that in and of itself will bring more people in. And so people, as they're walking by, see this crowd, and they want to know what the crowd's all gathered for, and so that brings more people in. And so it is the case that when they've got this large group of people around them that they display the best of what they can do. And they do this for money. This goes on all the time. We were in Chicago not long ago, and you remember those guys that were beating on the plastic drums with, I don't know what it was, but they were looking for that exact same scenario. And that's what we see here in Luke 15, beginning back in 14, is Jesus drawing these crowds around him and teaching them through these parables. We talked about it this morning that there were basically 2 groups of people. Some that were listening, those were considered to be those of the sinful group, the publicans and the sinners, and they were compelled to listen to what it was that Jesus was saying. And then we had this other group, this religious orthodoxy, and they were the ones who were opposed to Jesus and what it was that he was preaching. And they would have concluded that there's no way that this can be the Messiah. There's no way this can be the Son of God. He would not do this. He wouldn't appeal to these lowly sinners like this if he were indeed a man from God. And Jesus goes on, and he tells them these 3 parables, these 3 stories that we read from Luke 15 this morning about the lost sheep and the lost coin and these 2 boys that were lost, each story building on itself. And he says that there's joy when the lost sheep is found, and there's joy over this precious coin that is found, and there's joy in heaven over the repenting of the sinner. We talked about this youngest son and what it was that he did. He was at a point in his life where he became sick of home, and he leaves, and he becomes homesick, and then he becomes back at home. In verse 13, we saw how he gathered all that he had. In verse 14, he spent all that he had. In verse 14 also, we see that he was in need and he was helpless. In 15, that he needed a job and he found himself in this state of humiliation. In verse 16, we saw that he became so hungry that he thought about eating the pig food. And in verse 17, he came to himself, gripped by this real state of affairs. Verse 21, we see him repenting. And verse 24, we see this glorious reunion between him and his Father. Well, as we read this morning and as we move forward, we saw and we can see that after this initial embracing of his father, that his father immediately moves and says that we need to get this boy the best robe that we've got. And he says, bring the signet ring and put it on his hand and get him some sandals. Hey, and by the way, get that fatted calf that we've been saving and let's slaughter that and let's have a party. Because that which is lost now is found, and we can be joyous and we can celebrate this occasion. I guess there's been a lot that has been written, a lot that has been said specifically about these gifts that were given this boy. I think it needs to be pointed out, although I believe that we understand that these are certainly not rewards for his repentance. That's not the way it works. The scriptures would tell us that at some point that the father would say that to his older son that this was fitting, that we should do this. I want to ask you, what is your motivation for why it is that you want to go to heaven? Now that may seem like a simple, redundant question. Is it simply just because of what you've read about hell and how bad that place must be that you just don't want to go there? So you're working towards that end, and that's what motivates you to be here, is that you just don't want to go there? Or is it the fact that you've read and you have heard sermons about heaven, and you've sang songs about how beautiful it must be, and that's really what you want? You want a mansion, and you want a gold crown that's silver lined. You want all those great things that can be provided only as a part of that group that would go to heaven. Is that what motivates you? I would tell you that if either of those things are the primary factor in what it is that motivates you to be who you are, this lesson may be for you. Now, I'm not saying that these aren't in of themselves points that we should consider, and they should provide some motivation for why it is that we do it. Otherwise, why would we know what we know about them? But the real impetus for us and why it is that we live the way we live is because of who God is and what it is that He has done for us. And what it is that He is willing to do for us if we will but come to Him on His terms. You see, all of these things now that have been given to this boy, this embracing, this kissing, the ring, the shoes, the robe, the party, all of these are simply signals of the full and complete restoration of this boy to the family. That's what they serve to provide for this audience that Jesus is speaking to, and that's what they serve to provide, to tell us and to teach us that he is fully a part of this family, that he has been welcomed back without anything hanging over his head, that he is fully part of us again, and we are not holding anything against him. It's interesting as I think about this point in this boy's life, when he now has, these things on, what it would have been like if some of those friends of his could have seen him in this stage. Certainly they would have looked at him and said, "What in the world? The last time I saw you, man, you were working at a pig farm, and you didn't have 2 nickels to rub together, and now you've got all of this. How did this work? What did you do? Did you go and get some new inheritance? What is this all about? What did you have to do?" And he would have looked at me and he would have said, "Nothing. I didn't have to do anything." Oh, come on. There's just no way. There's no way you could have gotten all this without, signing a note saying that you would pay for it in the future. No. I did nothing. This was all given to me by my Father. You see, this story, if this were all that we had to read from Scripture, would be incomplete, because it's worth pointing out that this does not tell us everything that is involved in salvation. The Bible is complete in and of itself. There is more to it than just repenting. And there is more involved than just coming to the Father. And you and I know that because of what else is revealed, and the very nature of the fact that very soon Jesus would be going and giving Himself, providing His own life, so thousands. And in his story to the older son. It is a discovery now that the older son hates to find. It is a celebration that he is unsure of. And he must have thought to himself, why am I not included? Why am I not part of what's going on? After all, this is where I live. This is my house. Why am I not over there? And so he asks the servant, hey, what's going on? I hear this noise, this party that's happening up there at the house. What's this all about? And the servant begins to tell him, look, your brother's back. And he thinks to himself that I've been taking the high ground all along. And how does he react? He doesn't go in. There's something rather perverse about his position. The attitude that he has developed is not right. And he chooses not to be a part of this. He chooses not to celebrate over the fact that his brother is now back. Notice the progression in these parables. You know, at first it was 1 in 99. And then it was 1 in 10. Now it's 1 in 2. How's this going to end? Are both of these boys going to be returned to the fold? Is it going to be like the other stories, how everybody, rejoiced and was happy? No. The older son is not happy about this. He is angry that this is going on. It was a discovery that he didn't want to make. It was exactly what he did not want to have happen. And he says so. And he's calloused. And he's probably hurt that this is going on. Let me just ask you this. Is there any application here to us? Is it possible that because we're part of this family, that we could at any time see the lives of others and think that they don't deserve to be a part of this group? I know that may seem far-fetched, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. What is your attitude towards people that come forward? People that come and say, that I need your prayers, maybe over and over and over. Are you compassionate to that? Or do you see that as, they're looking for attention again? We need to be careful how it is that we view those who come with a penitent heart, or those who are in a different class of society. We alluded to that this morning. I've said this before. I think it bears repeating. If we are fortunate enough to bring some of those from the jailhouse that we work with into this assembly, how will you react? Will you be happy for them? Or will you think, they don't deserve this based on the way they've lived? based on what it is that they've done, based on the laws that they may or may not have broken. It's a discovery that he didn't want to make. It's also a sympathy that he did not want to show. In verse 28, we read that he doesn't go in. He doesn't go in, but his Father comes out. What does that say to you and me about God and about how he treats us with relationship to how we may want to treat others? I find that to be refreshing, that this boy at least gets somewhat close, but doesn't go in. And we see this loving, this tender father coming out to talk to him, to speak with him, to have words with him, to implore with him, to impeach with him, to reason with him. And that's our God. The love of the Father extends to both sons. One who went and got lost, and one who stayed home and lost out. One lost far away, and one lost close in. The Father reaches out to both of these boys. He runs down the road for one. He comes out and pleads with the other. What Jesus is teaching here is that the absence of forgiveness in the life of the older brother is indicative of the Pharisees and the predicament that they find themselves in. And they began to get it. They say to Jesus, or about him, that he welcomes sinners and eats with them. That is no commendation. They are not patting Jesus on the back when they say that. They are not saying that is great social work, well done. They are saying this man is a sinner as well, basically, because he is associating with this group. He is unclean and he is not worthy of our attention. The older brother views himself as a slave. In verse 29, he never disobeyed his father. And this is somewhat the Pharisees' game. They are slavish in their appearance. Inwardly, though, they are estranged from their God. This represents the Pharisees and anyone who is like them in this parable of Jesus. He boasts about himself. And he boasts about everything that he's done and how it is that he was the son that was here when times were difficult. He was the one that was up early tending to the goats. He was the one that was out in the field getting things ready to be plowed. He was the one ready to help and reap the harvest. I was the one that was here with you. I am the one that never left you, unlike my younger brother. He blames his father. You know what? I did all of these things. You never gave me a goat. You never threw a party for me and my friends. You never did this for me. Ask you a question. Does God owe you anything? Does God owe you anything? Well, that may be an easy answer for you to make, but I will tell you that there are people that struggle with that. You consider all the different circumstances that life will apply to your life, and there are some that will think that they are deserving of something other than what they have got. She has been a Christian all of her life. Why? She deserves a husband to live and to grow old with and to have a family with. He has been alone most of his life. He is faithful to God. He deserves a woman to be with him. She has a family. She is young. She has been faithful all of her life. She doesn't deserve this disease. And she doesn't deserve a life that has ended too soon. Well, I'll tell you, the great mystery is that we don't get what we deserve. There's a contrast here between the son that blew it versus the or should I say, this contrast is not between the son that blew it and the one who did. This contrast is not between the penitent son versus the one who saw no such need. The younger is bound to his father through mercy. The older is bound through legal obligation. We're not saying that the older son was bad. I mean, you and I can see clearly that he had some good qualities, that he was this person that was there. He was this son that didn't blow this inheritance. After all, the scriptures here would say that he was steady and that he was faithful. So we're not saying that this older son was just a totally useless, worthless individual, and that he was as evil as those of the day. We're not saying that the Pharisees were bad people. I mean, just think about these people. After all, these were God-seeking men. These were the men who labored over studying the Torah, and who were the ones that were trying to capture all the commandments that were laid on them, and that were trying to be what they thought in their mind was godly people. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, Romans 3:23. All have sinned, but not all have committed murder. We've all sinned, but we have not all lived and lied and been consumed with pride. My litany of sin looks different than your list of sin. There is distinction not in that all have sinned, but rather in how it is expressed. There is a vast difference between these two brothers, but the difference is relative. One lived better. There can be no question about that. But they are both equally sinners, and they are both equally in need of mercy. The older brother couldn't see it, and he represents the Pharisees. Pharisees couldn't see that. They were unwilling, and their hearts were hardened. And as we said this morning, they saw their religion in quantitative terms. The good that we are doing outweighs the bad, and so we are justified. This approach is the opposite of grace. It is contentment under legal obligation, and it is the older son's problem. He failed to see that sin is not only acts of disobedience. Matthew chapter 6, as we're going to be getting to soon in the class taught here on Sunday mornings, would teach us that there is more to it than that. That there is forgiveness that is required. And if we are unwilling to forgive one another, we will be those who are unforgiven. He had a heart of rebellion against his father, but it was expressed differently than his younger brother. He should not have been asking for what he did. He didn't want what he deserved. And what God was willing to give, there was no basis for him to receive. For him, this was a discovery that he did not want to make, and it was a sympathy that he did not want to express. And the absence of a forgiving heart is evident in his failure to understand. You and I will never be able to extend forgiveness until we recognize the amazing forgiveness of our Savior. The older son resented the younger son, and he failed to understand what is the essence of forgiveness. The fact that his brother had a relationship with his father based on something that he didn't understand highlighted the fact that his relationship with his father was in shambles and in disrepair. Amazing grace. How can it be? We sing the song. Well, I can just see now the neighbors, coming out of the neighborhood and hearing all this goings on up there at Joseph's house. Turn that noise down. What's with all the music? Turn it down. What's going on? And somebody else steps out and says, look, I know what's going on. I was looking out the kitchen window, and I saw Samuel running down the road, and he begins to embrace Joseph. If I get the names wrong, that's fine. And he kisses him, and then next thing I know, they're putting the robe on him, and they're having a party. And then I look out, and I see Benjamin, walking towards the house, and I see the father, come outside, and they start having words. It looks like they're really going at it there for a while. And the next thing I know, Benjamin turns around and walks off, and his father goes back into his house. But I think what's going on is they're having a party because the son that was gone is now back. But the older son turned and walked away. Let me ask you this. Would anyone choose hell? Would anyone choose hell? Of course they would. Why would anyone choose hell? Pride. Pride is the reason that people choose hell. If I go into the house, I'm going to have to admit that I'm not perfect, that I've messed up. If I go into that house, then I've got to go in on my knees, and I'm not willing to do that. I've got too much pride. I'd rather go in with everybody high-fiving me for all the hard work that I've done around the farm. I don't want to go in and admit that I am less than what they think that I am. Why is it so difficult for us to come before the church and to express the fact that we are in need of help? I've been to congregations around the country and I've seen it happen. And I've seen where on several occasions there have been multiple people that have come forward expressing the fact that I am in need of your prayers and I am having a difficult time and I've done this. Pray for me. And I think that's difficult for us. We don't want to admit that we're something less than what people think we are. When in actuality, that's exactly what we need to be. Penitent and remorseful. Each and every one of us needs to come to the Father on our knees. And each and every one of us needs the prayers of the saints. Too many of us have learned to play the game. Too many of us have gotten by on our wits. We've learned how to talk the talk. We've learned how to walk the walk. And I'm afraid too many of us are the older brother. Where are you this night? Are you the older brother? Are you the younger brother? Because both need repentance. Both need to come before the Father. And both need His forgiveness. I may be talking to someone tonight. I may be speaking to you. Don't be so proud that you can't come and ask for God's help. We're on your side. We're in your camp. If you need to respond to the invitation, why don't you come now while we stand and sing this song for your encouragement.
God is calling the prodigal, come without delay. Hear the waiting calling, calling now for thee. Though you wander so far from His presence,